I want to talk about being an American. The basic fundamental foundations of being an American is independence, liberty, and justice for all. It's part of the, well, it's a preamble of the Constitution, if I remember correctly. And liberty and freedom, independence, liberty, freedom, and justice for all. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but independence, liberty, and justice for all, if I remember right. The point of it is that our fundamental foundation of our country was built off of independence, and that also goes on a personal level. So what they used to joke about is that you got your 40 acres and the mule. That was kind of like your freedom and your independence when you got your land and you got an animal that you could start sowing and reaping. And so you would be able to take care of yourself. You would be self-sufficient, and you also be able to bring something to the community if you created an abundance on your own property. And that was one of the things that what you'll see today, the Democrat Party wants the exact opposite of that. They want you to be on food stamps. They want you to be on socialized medical care. They want you to be in a home that they pay your rent. They want you to be completely dependent upon the government. And that's just about everything that the founding fathers were against. They didn't want to be dependent on a foreign entity, a foreign country, or anything else like that. They wanted to take care of themselves, and they did. That was their main point, is that they said, give us your tired, give us your poor, and they took a lot of the people from foreign countries in Europe that those countries didn't want, brought them to the United States and turned it into one of the best countries. Now, that can be done if it's done properly, if you take those people through the proper channels like Ellis Island. If you just open the borders and let them run in and run amok, then they're not going to do their job, which is getting a job, paying taxes, becoming an upstanding citizen in society. They won't do that because they don't have to. They'll just go find a way to go make money for free. They won't pay taxes. They'll just run around and run amok. And that's what we see right now. So it's a stupid Democrat policy to keep the borders open. And Joe Biden kind of screwed us over the last 4 years, because somewhere between 10 to 50 million illegal immigrants are in the country now. And that is what you would call a formidable opponent to the freedom of American citizens. That being said, my brother and I, 7 years ago, he's autistic, right? He has a strong form of Asperger's. It's somewhere between Asperger's and a little bit stronger on the what do you call it? The scale of autism. So he's autistic. He has a sleepy eye and he has bad hand-eye coordination. He was born with all of this. He didn't speak until he was 3, but his first words were a complete sentence. It was like 5 words in a complete sentence. That was the first thing that he said. I was there for it. I was there for it. Me and Mom looked at each other, and I was barely old enough to really remember, but we looked at each other like, wow, okay. Kind of a surprise, right? He just all of a sudden started speaking a sentence. So he's kind of an amazing character for a lot of the things that he's had to overcome. And so I put some money down for him. We got him into a house and helped him out along the way. He's not too handy with his hands. I happen to be really handy, so I helped him build his house up because it was an old cabin. We had to redo a lot of the stuff in the house. We put in a wood-burning stove recently. He helped with that. I helped repair the roof. I helped repair the foundation, put in a bunch of beams from the foundation. We put in a water tank that gravity feeds into the house, so if the well shuts off, you still got a half-year supply of water, because we've got a well, right? And we've got a septic tank, so he doesn't have to worry about sewage. We've got chickens and a huge garden, so he can go garden. Like right now, I'm not in the area where he's at. I'm not at home, and so he's out picking garden. He's basically eating vegetables, eggs, and he's pulled a bunch of potatoes, so he's probably eating on potatoes right now. That's kind of like what his meals have been lately from the garden, right? Most of the food that he eats is coming from the garden right now, since it's summertime. And so he's essentially self-sufficient, except for electricity, internet, and throwing his trash away, which we have very little trash, because what paper towels and paper we use goes into the fire, right? We use that for fire starter, and we recycle the plastics and cans and all that stuff. That stuff kind of goes in separate containers, and we recycle that when the time comes. So in reality, we have very, very little garbage that comes from the house. So yeah, sawmill. I don't know if I mentioned that. We have a sawmill too. So I cut up a bunch of logs, and whatever's left over that we don't want to use goes into the fireplace to heat the house. But yeah, I've made a whole bunch of stuff like basically it's a seat, but it's also a table. You can use it for both. Coat hangers, a bench, an outdoor bench, a decent sized bench, like paper towel holder. What do you call it? Like a mitten holder for the oven, utensil holder for the kitchen, pot holder, right? Hanging pot holder, just a bunch of stuff. And I do pyrography too, so I'll put some like nice artwork on it before I lacquer over it. But yeah, it's amazing to be able to cut down the tree, shave the pieces off you're going to use, and turn it into a piece of art. I mean, there's nothing that feels like that. You feel very, very satisfied, and like what you've done is worthwhile. And one of the things about being on the dole when you don't have purpose in life, especially I woole say as a man who wants to be head of the household, you start drinking, you start getting in trouble, you have low self-esteem, and you kind of fall apart from there. It happens consistently among men who lose jobs. They lose jobs, and then their wife leaves them because they can't take care of the family, and they just basically fall apart. They go on a drinking binge, and then they just become kind of like a drunk running around. That being said, when you go and put people on food stamps and socialized medicine and start paying for rent for their house, and the person as a male has nothing to do, he finds something to do, and that's usually like drinking or drugs or misbehaving in one way or another, because he has no responsibility, and it's something that comes with being a man. So I kind of got my brother about as self-sufficient as I possibly can right now, without doing stuff like major things like putting in solar panels, a battery bank, or putting in a propane tank with a propane generator to run it for a prolonged period of time. Putting in the wood burning stove was good enough, knowing that we'll have a little bit of light and being able to heat some food on top of the stove and stay warm during the winter, because it freezes where I live. That's more than enough. We don't necessarily need, we've got candles, we've got other things like that. I've got a generator that is hooked up to go into the house when it comes down to it, so as soon as the power goes off, I can go outside and within 30 seconds to a minute have the generator running the electricity in the house. And we really don't need electricity for more than an hour or two a day at the most when it comes down to an emergency situation like that. We were without power for a week last winter because of a snowstorm, and it was like whoop-de-doo, big deal. We were warmer than we needed to be. It was outside snowing, and we were like sweating because of how good the wood burning stove runs. But my point is that is how Americans in rural country live. The people in the city wouldn't know what to do. They would freeze to death, or they would starve to death, or they would do something that would end up hurting themselves. Mostly because they've lived in the city their whole life, and they're not quite sure how to handle rural country living. And that's perfectly fine. But my point is that don't take a country boy and force him to live like he lives in the city, like how people live in the city. That's not fair. And that's one of the main problems that a lot of conservatives in the country have with the way Democrats feel, is that the cities hold the most people, and so they feel they're entitled to tell everyone else that lives out in the country, who is actually the majority of the landowners. The majority of the land is owned by these country boys, and they don't want anything to do with it. They want to be able to be self-sufficient, take care of themselves. They don't need some jackass trying to take their guns away when they're required for them to live out in the country. Like in some places, you have to have a gun. It's required. You live in Alaska, it's like you better have a gun rack in the back of your truck, and you better have a gun, right? Because you're gonna need it at some point in time. And if somebody tells you you can't have that, it's like telling them that at some point in time, I'm gonna take away something from you that's gonna make it so your life will be threatened. So when I think about that, when Kamala Harris is delusional and she does stuff like that, she says she wants to do gun buyback and gun control and things like that. It's a Democrat policy that doesn't take in consideration for everyone that lives in the country. It's all propaganda, and it's the same thing that a foreign entity would love, is to take away the guns of the American people, because then we're easy to invade. We're much easier to invade when everybody doesn't have guns. And I think I look at the way Kamala Harris wants to put people on basically food stamps, wants to put them on, rental control, wants to put them on socialized medicine, wants to look at the return on investment on, rental. She's doing the same thing that Trudeau did in Canada that destroyed the economy there, the housing economy. She's trying to implement the same policy that destroyed the housing economy and made it so hard for people to afford houses in the economy in Canada. She's trying to do the same thing in the United States, like it's a good idea. So when I say that everything that comes out of her mouth is a bad idea, believe me when I say that she is nothing what you would want to have as an American president. Because what she'll do is she'll implement policies that destroy America. She'll want to keep the border open. She'll want to pay illegal immigrants money out of the pockets of taxpayers, in which the legal immigrants aren't going to be paying for taxes, so why are they getting free money? They're going to get free socialized medicine, all kinds of crap. So when I look at it and I think about the way that the Democrats want to run the country, they want to run the country into the ground. They don't have what you would call financial stability in their own mind. They just think that they can print money out of nowhere. They just think that the United States Treasury and the Federal Reserve are like printing machines. They can just stamp coins and print dollar bills, and that's where the money comes from. They don't think, oh, well, we actually have to pay this off eventually in taxes, So that's why people who are on food stamps and don't pay for their own bills are so happy, and they're proponents of the Democratic Party, because they're getting a free lunch. But whose lunch are they stealing to get it, right? They're stealing someone else's lunch to eat it. And I think that that's wrong, because there's a lack of forethought in that. And it's one thing if you are someone that is in need, like you're handicapped to the point where you need assistance by the government, and you put into the system, you put into the system, and therefore the system has you covered. I think that that's totally fine, right? That's what Social Security is designed for. It's to take care of the elderly after they've retired from working so hard in the system and paying so much in taxes. That's a good policy. It helps take care of the elderly. Things like that, that's perfectly fine. But I think that people that are able-bodied, and some people that are morbidly obese and don't need to be eating as much as they do, and yet they're sitting there getting assistance by the government because they've done things to themselves like that, it's ridiculous. The country is being run into the ground because of bad Democrat policies. If we were more conservative and more willing to take care of ourselves and more willing to be independent, like my disabled brother is, my brother was like, I want to be independent. I don't want to deal with this crap. I don't want to deal with the crap that the Democrats want to push. He doesn't agree with a lot of their policies. He's an intelligent individual. He's had a lot of struggles, but he likes the being able to be self-sufficient and take care of himself, and it's something that gives him self-esteem and makes him feel good, right? It powers him on. It powers him on because he can say, yeah, I did that, and I did that by myself, and I made my life happen. Not a lot of Democrats out there can say that. They can say it to a certain extent, but if they're on ground level and they're taking like food stamps and socialized medicine, stuff like that, well, they're riding on someone else's lunch and they're doing it for free, so they can't really say that they've done a whole lot as far as being self-sufficient and taking care of themselves go. And when I see how they want to do that to everyone without taking in consideration that not everyone wants that, I don't know what they're thinking, besides they're thinking in a communist way. They're thinking in a way to where they want everybody on that system so they can maintain power and control. Because once you take away the ability of someone to grow their own food, to keep a house over their head without the assistance of the government, when you take away that ability where you're independent, what you do is you take away the freedom and you give all the control to the government. That's the main point, is that Democrats are in the guise of wanting to take care of the public, they're stealing power and control away from the individual, from the sovereign person of the United States, because every person in the United States is essentially a sovereign creature. There's a lot of things the government just absolutely is not allowed to do to you, and that's why people will have these debates with police on the side of the road, and the police will leave because they know that there's certain things that they cannot do to a citizen of the United States. And it's very important for that to stay that way, because that's what gives us the freedom and independence that we were born to have.